So in addition to lists, another format for a sequence is a tuple. So I'm going to create a new folder for that. Tuple demos. I open it up with code, and let's look at some of the differences with a tuple. First, let's open up a terminal and open up the Python interactive interpreter just by typing Python. And so some of the differences between a list and a tuple. Well, one of the things we saw, of course, was that if I create a list of numbers, I can, there's a lot of commands I can do that are unique to this. So I can append things to this. So I could append 4, for example, and I can do an append and add things to it. But tuples are immutable. So if I make a tuple that has 3 elements in it, then I try to do nums tuple.append, I'm going to get tuple object has no attribute append. And the reason is once you make a tuple, you can't really modify it. Now, what I could do is I could do something like this. I could take my tuple and just, well, actually, let's try this first. Let's say, well, let's try, nums tuple plus, that. Let's see if that worked. And that worked. And that seems kind of counterintuitive. It's like, why can't we do an append, but we could add, this single tuple with another tuple? Well, we can concatenate them. What really happens underneath the code, though, is it's actually creating a brand new tuple. This new tuple is actually not the same object in memory. It actually creates a new space in memory and creates this. Now, that this is probably not a bad thing. It looks the same, but there's inefficiencies here. Because it's creating a new space in memory, it kind of there's more thrashing here when it creates something. If you're going to constantly be adding tuples together, it's not an efficient way of creating things. Lists are much more efficient if you're going to be constantly appending and removing things, whereas tuples, really you should only use them if you're going to make this list one time, and then you're not going to do a lot of modification for them. So that's the primary difference between tuples and lists. And then one thing that you might notice here is when I made this single element tuple, I put a comma in here. Why is that? Well, if I put 4 like that, that actually is the number 4 with parentheses around it. And mathematically, that's just using parentheses to force the order of operations. And so this actually isn't a tuple with 1 element in it. To make a tuple with 1 element, I have to add a comma afterwards. And then that makes it as a tuple. So a single element tuple has to have a comma. In fact, it's really the commas which define a tuple. For example, if I do this in Python, it assumes that what I meant was a tuple. The parentheses are kind of unnecessary, really. We usually put them because it makes it clear that it's a tuple. And I could do this, and it would interpret that as a tuple as well. So if I did 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 4 comma, actually let's do this, so it's more similar to what we did. Well, there we go. That actually treated it differently, didn't it? And we see what happens is that, okay, well, it's going to interpret that as math. So how would we? So that's why you tend to use the parentheses. Is it makes it clear what's going on. But remember, with tuples, if you want to specify a single element, you need to put the parentheses in there. And same thing with names or with characters. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing here. You still have to have that comma in there for it to interpret it as a tuple. And then, if you have, for example, text is equal to blah, blah, and we wanted to convert it to a tuple, you have your tuple conversion function, and it'll do that. You can also make a list. And you can change a list to a tuple. So those are some of the unique things about tuples. And in other respects, we can, work with tuples much the same way as lists, except for the ability to append and modify and change. So you can't take your, if I had, see what did I create up here? Nums tuple. So I have nums tuple that was created, and if I want to change, and I can access, for example, the element at index 2, which is at 3, but I can't change it. I can't do this. Okay, so those are the primary differences between tuples and lists. Thank you very much.